everyone, it's Byler o'clock. Today we are going to resume and talk about all the Byler evidence that there is in season 5 and how it's the perfect setup for Byler, and we could never get more than that. Like, it was perfect. There's not many scenes with them together or even in groups. Episode 2 and 3 are them a bit more separated, but if all the scenes of them alone are this insane, then maybe it's a good thing that they didn't have more. Maybe some of my ideas and theories that I found are a reach. It's possible. I'm going to mention when I believe myself that it could be a reach. But let's go. I'm going to proceed by episode and then at the end make a resume of what it means as a grand idea. So in episode 1 we can clearly see that Will is Mike's shadow. That's insane. He's always behind Mike. Mike is here, Will is here. And a lot of people at this moment, when they saw the premiere, the first episode, said that Will was distancing himself from Mike. I don't know where, when, and how they thought that, but clearly not. Clearly not. He's not distancing himself. That's not the case at all. In those 18 months, something shifted. Their relationship is stronger than ever. In this episode, we see that Will looks at Mike a lot, and we could say the same for Mike. Let's have doubts, let's not take that too much into consideration, let's pretend that we don't see it. I counted every time they had a shared look, every time they had touches, every time they have a bump of the elbow, and I'm going to give you all of this at the end, the numbers at the end. Like, one thing I noted on episode 1 is that it's not about Byler exactly, it's about Dustin's speech. Will says, "Follow the rules, blend in." Mike looks at Will. Then Dustin responds, "Blend in, follow the rules. That's not what we've ever done. We stay true to ourselves and we're supposed to stay true to our friends. We stand up for what's right no matter what's the cost." I think it's interesting that he says this because Dustin is probably the only one that never really hid himself compared to the others. Lucas says, "You're not listening to us." Dustin says, "No, you're not." I just thought about something cinema-wise. When Dustin says, "We stay true to ourselves," the camera shifts to Will and Mike, especially Will looking at Mike. And when he says, "We stand up for what's right no matter what's the cost," it shows Lucas. I think it's quite their purpose in season 5. We know that Will has trouble being himself, but we also think that Mike also is. And we know that Lucas is right now doing his best to protect Max and his friends. I really like this scene because in the very beginning, they're aligning something. They're showing you something, like the Duffers are explicitly telling you that trying to blend in is not a good thing. It's not good. Stop trying to act like someone you're not. But it's also a safe option to do so. It's to be safe. That's exactly what they're telling you. Blending in is a safe option. Trying to be yourself is dangerous. But no matter what's the cost, being yourself is way much more important than blending in. That's what they're telling you with this scene. And I know it's not inherently related to Byler, but the theme of internalized homophobia, trying to hide yourself, your identity, that is clearly present in Volume 1 because we're talking about self-acceptance. And I think it's a very good insight of Dustin too, because he never tried to be someone else compared to the others. And I think he makes a great point. A really good point. We shift scenes, and we have the scene at the table when Will has this vision of Holly. Mike's touches on Will stays longer. He lingers on it, and at some point, he even goes up and down on Will's arms. Here it stays, go down and up, and then after that he stops. That could be a reach. Like I said, I'm mentioning when it's a reach, that could be a reach. In this scene, Dustin and Lucas also touches Will to comfort him, but it's different. It's not as long, they're not staying as long, and I think it's very funny because I think it's a reach. I don't think it's intentional, but I think it's very funny of when Mike turns to look at Lucas, it turns back and Lucas, like, it takes away his arm. And I think it's it's funny because it could be a reach and it was maybe not intentional, but it's a detail that I have to point out that I find really funny. Again, this scene is not like about Byler explicitly, but it relates to the fact about what Robin says just after in the future episode about the snowball becoming an avalanche. We're going to talk about this, but I'm focusing on episode 1 for now. Now, let's change scene and let's go to the scene with Holly and Mike that are discussing about Holly's problem with Mr. Woodsit. Right there, a lot of people are going to say, how can you relate that to Byler? Actually, I can. It's a lot related to what Will said in season 4. You see this scene of Mike, and there's Holly sitting by his side, and there's the poster on the side with a rainbow. But at first, you don't see it. You don't see it until the very end of the scene when Will starts talking. I'm pointing that out, but we're going to go deep into what Mike says. We learn that when Mike is scared, he turns to D&D and uses Mike the Brave to feel better. He mentions the crawls, he imagines that he's at his side, and when he's scared or nervous, he thinks of Mike the Brave. I think it's very funny because it's a direct link to what Will said and gave the painting to Mike. Is talking about how Mike is the leader, etc. And D&D has such a special place in Mike's mind that this resonates a lot with Will's speech, and that shows once again how important Will's speech is to Mike. And that's not just a painting that Will gave Mike to say I love you to hell. It's something that runs way deeper than a lot of people think about. It gives Holly the heroic, and I want to point out something. It's a little detail. When she's in Henry's mind space and she goes to meet Max, she's dressing as Holly the heroic, and I think it's a small detail, but it's a very important one. This is how much impact Mike has on people. His words are very important, and him being a leader again, having this headspace where he can lead people is very important, and once again related to Will's speech in the van. Now, once the scene is finished with Holly and Mike, the camera shifts and it's like going away from them, like it's going at the back, and Will becomes the narrator, and for a few seconds the poster is revealed. In it, it says, "Do you have the qualities of a good leader?" Yes, it does. The fact that there's this poster just beside them after Mike just comforted Holly, and the callback of being a good leader, which is a direct callback to the van scene, is very important. Since the beginning of the season, we are already telling you, look how Will's speech to Mike affected Mike. Because not only there's this poster, but Will is the narrator. Will says, "It was this weird feeling, like something I really haven't felt before." And after that, it shift and talk about Mike and what Mike told him about Vecna. My point is that they made what Will said very important to Mike. Looking at the scene, we see that. And then also made what Mike thinks about Will very important to Will. It's like a 2 for 2. At this moment, Mike tries to reassure Holly. Is the representation of what it is like to not look behind the curtain and what it is like to take everything at face value, which is going to regret later on. Is not taking Holly's words seriously, because if he had thought more than 3 seconds about what Holly had said, he would have understood that Mr. Woodsit is not just an imaginary friend, it's something else, and she's talking about the monster, and he also talks about monsters. If he had just looked a bit more into what Holly said, he would have understood. But he didn't. And because of that, Holly paid the price. That's a way for the Duffers to tell you, be careful. Don't take everything at face value. You're wrong for doing this. And that's not the only time they're doing it. They're going to do it later on, and we're going to talk about that. How is that Byler related? It's all about looking at small details, and we're going to be proven that later on in episode 3, I think, with Robin and Will talking. They've proven that. Like, Byler is in the pocket. I'm sorry, it's in the pocket. The cat is in the bag. So now we have to shift against scenes. So obviously the Will sing Raviki Kiss is important. There's this upful music. Will concentrates on the touches, and then he sees the kiss and he realizes, and then he's shocked. He runs away. that's the first time that Will saw someone like him. He thought he was alone. He thought it was a mistake, but he's not. And he realizes that, oh, I'm not alone, but he also doesn't know what to do with this information. And I think it's important to not only note the fact that he was shocked about it and surprised, he was hopeful about it. The music is hopeful, the scene is sweet until he ran away. Because right now he's realizing something. Oh, wait, maybe I can have this. I'm going to make that this idea connect to other scenes later on. Mike and 11 are weird. That's an understatement because not only Byler saw that, but the general audience also saw that. They have like 3 scenes together. The hug, where they don't even kiss, which is a completely different idea from season 4, where they ran to each other and kissed. Here they didn't. When they looked away to look at people, their face fell, like their faces fell. Then we have the rooftop scene where they're talking about everyone and a happy ending. Once again, Mike using D&D as a way to comfort 11, and 11 asking, could it be us? Could we do that? So it could, to me, she's talking more about everyone in the group, because you can see that she's very set up on protecting everyone. So I think she's talking about everyone. But if we take the idea that maybe 11 is talking only about Mike, she's literally asking herself, could we ever have a happy ending? Obviously, they talk about Will and how when Will has a feeling, it matters. But after that, the scene shift of Lucas calling them lovebirds, and this is their faces. That's their faces at being called lovebirds. I'm going to make a whole video about it, but Elle is a realist to a pessimist. Mike is an optimist. He lives in this fake bubble to protect himself and his identity that he hadn't found yet, whatever it is, queer or not. And in each of those scenes, it seems like they live in a bubble, that it burst out. It's literally burst, like 2 minutes, 1 minute. It's never long. They're always being burst by reality. Whether it's Dustin that is missing or the Hopper that is ready for the crawl, their bubble is always burst. They cannot hide anymore. They have to face reality, especially Mike. And after that, the only scene they have next to each other is when they're preparing the crawl. And they don't talk. They don't do anything. They don't look at each other really. So nothing really happens. So now I do understand why people said that 11 fell off in episode 1. Because it is off. Not only this, but when he talks about Elle, instead of talking and saying hell, he's calling her 11. Most of the time he's calling her 11, and I think that's the most he's called her 11 in all 4 seasons. If I'm not wrong, Hopper calls her Jane, and she's letting go of the egos, and now she like beef jerky. I don't know, she's so different this season. Of course I'm talking about Elle, I think it's important, but I made a video about Elle independence, and she's literally following the path that I thought she was going to follow. Which is, she doesn't even think about Mike. Mike is not even here. She's using her power. She doesn't even think of him. Just like I said, she doesn't need Mike. She never did. I think she proved me right in volume 1. I like that. So a lot of people think that they might have already broken up, or at least took a break until the situation is resolved. That's a possibility. We don't know. I don't know. We are going to see. Now we shift to the scene where they are with everyone. I think this scene is important for Byler for one reason. Mike is always behind Will because he is just here, but he is also always in the shot. Is always in the shot, and we see him compared to the others always looking at Will's head, like behind him. And I think this is a foreshadowing of what Mike tells Will in episode 4 and how he believes in Will, because Will right now feels useless. Literally, he just wants to help, but his mother doesn't let him help. And I think Mike understood that, and that's why we see him look at Will multiple times and he's always in the shot. I think we kind of have this foreshadowing moment of Mike realizing that Will feels like this. In episode 2, there is not a lot of things that happens. Mike's closet is destroyed at the beginning when the Demogorgons are at his house. Well, the Demogorgon is at his house, that's the only one. And the one-way sign is still here. The one-way is still pointing at the closet, but the closet is destroyed. It used to be open, but now it's completely destroyed. The closet doesn't even exist anymore. Then in episode 2, we also have the scene with Will and Robin. Robin trying to like understand if it was Will that saw her or not, trying to understand, have clues. And he denies it and then stumbles because he's panicking and he's like, no, no, no. And then, what I want to point out is what Robin says about Vicky. She's my friend. We're friends. Good friends. Some people might not understand our friendship. Weird. Weird that I know a friendship that is kind of special, and a lot of people do acknowledge that they have a different friendship than with their other friends. But after what she says, Will is pensive, and music starts to play. Is like thinking. Is thinking. Is reflecting on something. And he's once again pensive. Just like he was when you watched Raviki kiss and you watched the touches. It was pensive. It was like reflecting on something. And that's the second time and not the last time that he does this. And of course, it's self-acceptance. Most of it is self-acceptance. I'm not denying that. We all know that's why I'm not pointing this out. Right now, I'm just trying to find clues for Byler. In episode 3, so another tiny bit of thing to show how Will's relationship with Mike is different. It's the scene with the plan. Will is explaining the plan, but there's holes, so everyone is kind of like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. There's many plot holes. And Mike agrees to Will's plan. It just makes it better, which again circles back to the idea that Mike is a good leader and that they're linked together. They work well together. Will is making an initial plan and Mike makes it better to work. It doesn't really change the plan. It just adds additional things to make it work. And it's a tiny detail and it could be a reach, but I think it's not about Byler being romantic in itself. It's to show how they stand in this friendship, in this relationship. They're just close. They just understand each other very well. Now, obviously, we have to talk about the scene that sealed Byler for me. And it's not per se about what Robin said, but more about what Will said. In this scene, Will teased Robin with the kiss, and he's like, you could kiss her again. So first of all, I think it's a good point to notice that he doesn't think it's disgusting anymore. You shifted once again. He grew up, he doesn't think it's disgusting anymore. In contrary, you think that kissing your partner as an apology or during a fight is more sweet, and it's a good thing to do. He's a heartless romantic. He became that because he started to accept himself the second he saw Raviki kiss, not only when Robin talks to him. She put the nails on the coffin when she says this. The self-acceptance actually evolved since episode 1. That's where it begins, not only episode 4. And now he asks, how did you know that with Vicky, right? How did you know that Vicky wanted to date? And she says to make out. So here, that's important. That's important. Because it's not about how do you know that someone like you? How do you know that someone might feel the same way? It's not uncertainty. He asks directly, how do you know someone wants to date? Date is another step. It's something bigger than just trying to understand if someone likes you. Like, it's something bigger to date. And we know who he's in love with. And we know that when he asks that, he's not asking that with nothing in his mind. Because he's pensive after this. He's thinking about Mike. What the fuck did Mike do in those 18 months to make Will have hope that maybe what happened? What happened in those 18 months to give Will this hope, to give Will the courage to ask Robin what are the signs? Then she says, they were like signals. And Will responds, signals. And here she says, like a brush of the knee, a bump of the elbow, a shared look. It's all kind of accrued, like a snowball rolling down a hill until it was obvious. How obvious? The snowball became an avalanche. Something that, to me, proved that this is where they're heading. Will is pensive. Once again, that's the third time where he's starting to think about something. If you're wondering, yes, there's more. I just went really quickly through the seasons to find those screenshots. I did not rewatch everything. So if you actually rewatch every scene carefully, I'm pretty sure you can like double this. He's thinking about something. You can see it on his face. He has something on his mind. He just asks Robin how to know the signs that someone likes you. He wants to check if he's delusional or if he isn't. What happened in between season 4 and season 5 to make Will shift completely in his opinion about what Mike wants? Like, I don't think we realized in season 4, Will was like Hercules. He was like holding the Eleven relationship with his own arms, with his own strength. What happened in between to make Will feel that maybe he had a chance? What happened in between to make Will so comfortable with Mike again? Like, yes, we have this foreshadowing at the end of season 4. I'm not going to say against that. But like in those 18 months is long. I would also like to say that it's enough time for Will to get over Mike if that's what they were trying to do, but they didn't, so why? He's not hoping for something little, he's hoping for something big. But this scene is not only about Will, it's also about a recontextualization. And I think I talked about that in my latest Byler video. The only thing they need to do in season 5 is to recontextualize Mike's and Will's actions since the beginning. That's it. And that's exactly what they did. She's talking to you and me. She's giving you the clues of what to look for, what to be aware of. Do I have to remind you what they call Mike and Will looking at each other in season 4 when they were directing? Shared look. All the shared look that they had in the van scene, all of the times they see each other, they look at each other, all of this are called shared look by the directors. It was set in stone. They made that on purpose. At some point, Lucas tells Mike and Nancy, so it's in episode 2, I think, when he's talking about November 6th and the day that Will got taken, he says, "I don't believe in coincidences. Not anymore." And they've been telling you this, that the details are important, that all this is important. And a lot of people overlook this because they only see the supernatural plot, while forgetting that the supernatural plot is inherently linked to the characters' arcs. And the last thing I want to mention in episode 3 is, but I highly doubt his long-term goal is friendship. Mike says this and then the camera goes to Will. So to me, this is kind of a reach, but that could be a Byler evidence. But I personally, when I watch this scene, I don't exactly have this impression. Now, we're going to move on to the last episode of season 5, which got me absolutely crazy. And when I saw episode 4, I was like, oh god damn it, they really did it. They really made that. Robin says about Will's possibility having powers, sometimes at the squawk, when signal comes in too strong, it overloads the system. And she says after that, you jacked right into the goddamn control center. And this, obviously, she's talking about Will's powers. But we also know that Will's powers is related to his feelings. And she talked about signals being about the feelings. And in their field scene speech, which we're going to talk about in a few seconds, there's the signal tower, the radio tower, just behind Mike. And Will openly flirts with Mike in this. And at some point, I do believe that Mike got an overload of signals. That was the first time, probably, or one of the only times that Will finally does something. This time it's Will that did, and that shocked him to the core. Because this scene is nothing else but flirting. Literally, this scene cannot be interpreted as friendship. Simply because Robin clocks them. She sees Will's feelings are, we're aware of Will's feelings. We're aware of everything. This scene is not platonic. And you have no scene like that between Dustin and Lucas, or Mike and Lucas, or Mike Dustin. That does not exist. But it does exist between Mike and Will has feelings for Mike, and Robin sees them. Of course, she's making the joke about Dick and washroom. And there, once again, one of the... There's so many shared look, but it's another point where they're having a shared look. In the field scene, Mike and Will are separated from the whole group, showing how they're closer than anyone else. They chose to just walk with each other instead of just being with the whole group. They're just behind everyone else in the field, which could be a connection back to season 3. Joy says, sometimes people need someone to believe in them. Mike bumps into Will. Will looks at him and bumps back. A bump of the elbow. In this moment, the light is on them. The whole group is in the shadow and the light is on Will and Mike. Which is, right now what she's saying is a complete foreshadowing of what Mike is about to say and the ending of episode 4. We see Mike being pensive and they have a heart-to-heart, and Will is opening up about feeling scared about this whole situation, about being afraid. And Mike asks him multiple questions, is trying to understand the situation better, because right now he's already cooking what he's about to say to Will. And, you know, once again, the radio tower is just behind them. The show caught the moment with opening a door. In the previous scene, we have an handheld camera and an over-the-shoulder one, and that creates some kind of shakiness, just like how their discussion and the topic of the discussion is shaky and uncertain. We open the door, and after this, they are still, and there's no shakiness anymore. The music and the birds start playing, and they are openly flirting. Not only this, but the birds also appear in another scene, when Jopper are together, and Hopper tell Joyce that she's getting more beautiful every day. In this scene, we see Mike comforting Will using D&D again, and that maybe Will did turn off the movie and protected his mom. Mike is convincing Will at this moment that he's more useful than he thinks he is. He says, except I'm not Vecna. And he's smiling, he's laughing, and he's giggling, he's chuckling. And Mike says, you sort of are. He's teasing back. He's not hiding himself. Like, he's just letting himself flirt back with Will. Like, hello. You see how Will is fond of Mike. He never tried to stop his feelings. They're there. He knows they're there. He's never tried to distance himself. I don't know who had this idea and where does it come from, because he simply doesn't. He doesn't. He's more and more accepting himself, and with the more acceptance he has, he let himself flirt back. That's insane. That's just insane. Will is making the first steps, and he's hitting Mike. And, you know, he's like shoving him, and I think it's very sweet. Like, they have this complicity, this chemistry that they don't have with anyone else. In this scene, we have 3 different POVs. We have Will's POV, Mike's POV, and Robin's POV. In Mike's POV, Will is always shining. The sun is shining on the side of his face, and he's like shining, and he looks so happy, he looks so sweet, he looks so in love. And then in contrary, in Will's POV, Mike's is at first a bit grayish. The light is not exactly there, not like Will is. But the more we go, the more we continue, the light is becoming warmer and warmer. Will laughed because of Mike. Mike looks down and up again, and the light is 2 different colors. Mind you, when I watched this scene for the first time, I realized, oh, that's really is happening right now. I was never delusional. That is just happening. And I cried. I won't lie, I cried. Proof. I took a picture of myself crying. I was like crying, sobbing, and I was like, what is going on? What the fuck is going on? Like, what the fucking whole scene in episode 4, Mike and Will with the sunset and Robin looking at them. What the fuck? Will's love for Mike is insane. It's so deep. It's not love at first sight. It's something else. It's a cultivation of years and years and years of being with each other. And I think that's just so beautiful that made me cry. I sobbed. He gave Will the name of the episode. This is how much impact that Mike has on Will. He says that Will's parts are innate, just like Will's love. Will's love for people, especially Mike and his family, is innate. It's just him. And him using this self-acceptance, this love that he has for other people and the love he feels from them is what makes him have those powers, makes him have this capacity of fighting back. If feelings, if the love is what cultivates Will's powers and his ability to take Vecna's powers more so, then what makes you think that him being rejected is going to be a thing? It calls Will's possible powers magic. And magic is different than powers. When you talk about someone and you tell them like you have powers or you have magic, it's something that is two different, like it's two different terms. He's literally saying 11 is in the upside down and we really need magic up here. Now, let's talk about the infamous scene with Robin. And before that, I'm going to talk about Robin's POV of what's going to happen and what brings her to say this. First of all, we see her, she clocks Mike and Will. She sees them. And their body are way much more darker than they are when they are looking at each other. She sees an image of them that is not elided. It's not completely elided. Here, she's clocking and she's starting to understand the situation for Will. What we're supposed to focus on here is not Mike walking away. It's Will. Because at this moment when Mike is walking away, you can see on Will's face that he is scared. He is fearful. And that's how we know that what he just did was not simple amicable fight, not simple amicable teasing. No, he was flirting. He knows this, and that's why he makes this face. He's so scared of what he has just done. Like, he's so scared of maybe ruining something that he just... That's not what we're focusing on. And we know that because after that, they go on the tunnel, and Will is just behind. And she's, like, understanding where Will is in his mind. She realized completely where and what Will is feeling. So the fact that we still have this continuation of Will walking behind everyone and Robin understanding that this scene, the fact that they made this after seeing Mike walk away, is not a show that Mike doesn't like Will. It's a show that she's concentrating on what Will is feeling right now. So let's read it. Let's read what she's saying and what she's talking about. Robin is talking about Tammy and she says she felt like she was Whitney Houston. The first time I saw her, oh my god, time slowed down. A scene from some lame-o movie. Her hair blew in the wind and she just looked perfect. So goddamn perfect. And it was right then and there that I knew she was the one. That with Tammy, I would finally be able to be myself. You know, all of myself. Because there was always the part of me that kind of scared me, you know? Here, she's already talking about the fact it's about herself and not about Tammy. But I thought that if Tammy loved me, all of me, you know, I wouldn't be so scared anymore. And then he showed up, Steve the Hair Arrington. Tammy felt for him hard. Then she's explaining that, well, after that she lost herself. Once again, this shows us that this situation is different. Will did not lose himself. He was heartbroken many times in the show. I'm not going to lie about this, but he did not lose himself either. He did not get grounded because of anything like this. Like, we see again a comparison that their situation is just not the same. And she found this 8mm film reel in her garage while cleaning. She's talking and she says from a silly movie she had made in 4th grade, she watched it and she saw her looking at a version of herself that she had lost. A version of herself that was so carefree, so free, that loved all of herself. It was never about tone-deaf Tammy, it was always just about me. She's literally saying right now, it's not about Tammy, whether or not Tammy liked her. It was always about how she viewed herself. She says, I was looking for answers into somebody else, but I had all the answers. I just needed to stop being so goddamn scared of who I really was. Once I did that, I felt so free. It's like I could fly, like I could finally. And then after that, Will says, like rocking Robin. Here, she's pointing out the fact that this was never, ever about Tammy. It was always about how she saw herself. Because in her time, when that happened, there was no one to tell her that she shouldn't love herself because of Tammy. She should love herself because of herself. And that's what she's taking. She's taking the role of what she never had. And in that, she nowhere she says give up on Mike. This is Robin's experience. You cannot take Robin's experience, copy paste it to Will and say, oh, it's done. No, that's not how it works. She's not like, you're not supposed to copy paste Robin's experience for Will and Mike, because simply that doesn't work. It's not possible. You cannot copy paste it. The fact that she got rejected and the fact that she had to be punished and clean the garage is what made her find this film. If Tammy liked her back and she never had this period of her time of understanding why she couldn't like herself, then Tammy would have reciprocated her feelings and Robin would have kept loving herself through Tammy instead of loving herself just for herself. It was never a question of being liked back by Tammy or not. It was always a question of having to understand you cannot like yourself through someone else. Because if you take the scene at face value, she's still not comparing Mike. She doesn't talk about Mike. She says just, don't try to love yourself through Mike. That's the only thing she's saying. And she doesn't even mention his name. We do have the tape of Will's life after that. And Mike isn't it. His experience and Robin's are different. Let's go back and listen to what she says about Tammy. Love at first sight. She compares Tammy to Whitney Houston. She's talking about an idealized version of Tammy that doesn't exist. And then she says that she used Tammy as a way to love herself. Does this apply to Will's love for Mike? No. They met when they were kids, and Will's love for Mike just blew from there. It just gradually came to be until he has this sweet and pure love for Mike, because he's known Mike his whole life. Does he idealize Mike? No, multiple times you see that he doesn't. He literally tells Mike when he's doing something wrong. He says it feels less like a mistake when Mike is here, but it doesn't stop feeling like a mistake. So this happens for Will, yes. This one could happen. The other two, related to Tammy Thompson, Tammy is not a comparison to Mike. And we know that too. Do you know why? Because Noah Schnapp is not and has no capacity to shut up. The interviewer asked, also, during the first episode back, Will spies on Robin Buckley, Maya Auk, as she's having a loving relationship with a woman. What is going through his character's mind at that moment? And Noah Schnapp responds, we can only infer that he's trying to find his own. Schnapp explains, he's maybe starting to see parallels in his story and hers, and starting to learn more about himself through observing her. And yes, he's mostly talking about how Will is seeing himself because she's gay, but parallels, plural, parallels. Being gay is one thing. Parallels is plural. He's talking about multiple things. And we know that in this scene, he's looking at the touch, he's looking at the kiss, he's pensive. And then after that, he asks, oh, obvious, how this snowball becomes an avalanche. The signals is asking, not only because he's trying to accept himself, but right now he's actually realizing that maybe he has a chance. What the fuck happened in those 18 months? Again, he's paralleling himself and he sees himself in the place of Robin. When she's with Vicky, not when she's with Tammy. We know those parallels from season 4 of the love triangle. Mike is not Tammy. Mike is Vicky. Just like Vicky had a boyfriend. They're literally showing you. Being in a relationship with another gender doesn't mean you cannot be in a relationship with the same gender after that. They literally showed that to you in season 4. Now, the comedic scene with the plumbery
and Dick.
For some reason, they overlap their hands instead of just using each their jackets. Like, you know, they have different points where it's like bursting open. Mike could have just taken his jacket off, wrapped it around, and Will did the same with the other plumber problem. But they didn't. They panicked and overlapped their hands. The scene is so comedic, but it just doesn't make any sense of doing it like that. But let's talk about this scene and what it can represent. First of all, the obvious joke, eat the dick. Look at who's going to make it softer. Mike talking about it being hard. Like, we know they're talking about an actual dick right now. That's the joke. So yeah, I better not see anyone, like, if Byler points this out, like the representation of the plumbery literally being
Dick.
the washroom being dick, and then after we talk about this parallel that Mike and Will are holding the plumbery, you better not say we're sexualizing children, because the joke is already there. We didn't make that. We're just pointing out that this is the joke. And I think it's very funny. It's a callback, I think, in my opinion, to the snowball becoming an avalanche. It's funny that it starts with little drips of water until it literally explodes, and the one who's trying to contain that is Mike and Will, and they're not able to contain it. Just like the snowball that becomes an avalanche, you cannot stop an avalanche. It's just there. Just like the water bursting out cannot be contained. At this point, I'm talking about the theories that I happen to come across regarding this scene, because it's a comic scene, but a lot of people pointed something that I found interesting, so I want to talk about it. Mike and Will are caught in a compromising situation in a bathroom, and someone is calling an officer on them. This could be a parallel to the experience of queer people who were caught in private spaces during the 80s, bathroom raids in bars for inspections of bathhouses. That is a possibility. Or it's also a reference, like I said, to the snowball that becomes an avalanche. It starts with drips and then it bursts out, and Will and Mike are not able to contain it. The whole plot of Volume 1 for Will is accepting himself regarding his feelings of who he is and Mike. So them just flirting 5 minutes before that, and then the pipe bursting open, them trying to contain it, them trying hard to contain it, but it just doesn't work. It could have a deeper meaning. It could. We know that the Duffers love deeper meanings. We know that they love foreshadowing. It could. Now let's talk about the final scene, and when Will first start to feel the Demogorgons and he falls down, and Mike wants to go to Will, and he's like screaming Will, Will, Will 3 times, and is like restrained by the military. And after that, later on, another Byler little thing is, well, Will is on the ground, almost passed out because he just lived something so horrible, and Mike says, Will, come on, in a soft voice, hurried voice, but in a soft one. Then after that, we continue with Vigna arriving, and he uses Will's sexuality against him. He uses Will's vulnerability on the 2 scenes where his sexuality was the most obvious. Castle Byers being destroyed after Mike told him, it's not my fault you don't like girls, and then when he had to turn around crying because he lied to Mike about his own feelings, 11, etc. And he uses this as a way to tell Will that he's weak and he does not belong in this world. And I think it's really cool that he uses this. And then after that, Will uses the exact same thing in a way to accept himself. He's accepting his sexuality, he's accepting who he is, his vulnerability, his love for Mike. Mike is the first memory we see. And then after that, his family and all this is accepting himself to its full extent, and is unlocking, because probably of what Mike said. Since the episode is called The Sorcerer, for me it's kind of obvious that Will ended up managing to do this because he thought about what Mike said. He happened to do the exact same thing that Mike told him he was able to do. So to me, he's thinking about that. The love that Will feels for Mike transcends everything. And I'm going to say it, and I'm not scared to say it. Will's love for Mike is stronger than Elle's love for Mike. And it has always been. Like, this is just insane. Mike's love for 11 is not able to make it better. She's not stronger by this. And in contrary, Will takes the strongness, like, becomes stronger by protecting his friends, his family, and the one he's in love with. He finds power into protecting his loved ones. That's why Mike ended up with Will would make so much more sense, because that's the whole character of Will. The love is the whole character. We see that the focus is on Mike, The focus is on Mike getting attacked. Of course, we see Lucas, we see Robin, but the focus is on Mike. The time slowed down, and we see Mike getting attacked, and then it cut off to Will, who saw this happen, and memories. Memories of Mike, memories of Joyce, memories of Jonathan. Is channeling Vecna's powers at this moment, finding them within himself, and the swing is blue and yellow. The little Will, the little Mike are wearing blue and yellow. Take what you want from this information. When blue and yellow meets in the West, in California, and everything about the colors with Will and Mike is blue and yellow in those scenes, the color grading is blue and yellow. And when again, on their clothes, they're blue and yellow, and they're just using this all the time. They're just using blue and yellow all the time for the color grading of Will and Mike after season 3. It's very funny that in the scene with the memories, needing to stop being so goddamn scared happens during the D&D scene. And we know how the bond between Mike and Will and Mike in general is all about D&D. So I think that not only this is talking about Will, I think all the situation with Robin is inherently linked to Mike, even if we are not shown this. So related to him when you think about it, that it's deliberate, in my opinion, that they said needing to stop being so goddamn scared when there's Will and Mike discovering D&D together. And of course, they decided to make Mike being attacked and not Joyce that is just beside him. This is deliberate. This is completely deliberate because Mike is the first person that Will thought of. And then Will has those powers that he channeled from Vecna. And like I said earlier, Mike is so proud of Will. Like, this is not a, wow, I'm in love with him at this moment because he has power. No, this is not what happens. What happens is, wow, I'm so proud of him. He saw Will grow up with him. He saw how Will was always roughed up, how Will was always being victimized, how Will was always a bit fearing things. And right now, he's finally taking control of the situation. Mike is insanely proud of Will at this moment. In Mike's mind, he must, one, feel so proud of Will, but also feel so wanted from Will, because Will listened to him. He was right, and Will listened to him, and Will wants Mike. This is not a situation of Will wanting, like, it's not anymore the situation of Will needing Mike. It's Will wanting Mike to be safe, wanting Mike to be here, listening to Mike. This is not a choice of fate. This is not destiny. This is pure choice, pure consent, pure from the get-go. Just they decided to be in each other's life. That has never been a concept of destiny, of fate. They made it. Mike asked to be Will's friend, and they talk to each other, and it's like always a question about consent and choices, and no longer a concept of fate and destiny. Just like Max getting with Lucas is a question of choice. She chose to listen to Lucas. She chose to actually go with him and to listen to him. That was never a question of fate, of destiny, of what they should do. No, never. It's always about wanting something, wanting it. I want to talk about something which is the shift of POV that we have from Will then to Mike. This is a foreshadowing of the fact that in Volume 2 we're going to have much more of Mike's POV and finally enter his brain after like 3 seasons of nothing. But I want to talk about the fact that whilst entering Mike's POV we also enter a crush filter, which is a trope that is commonly used in anything actually that regards the media, where the person you are entering the brain of, so the person you're impersonating in the shot, which is for now Mike, sees the person they are in love with and they look absolutely perfect. When they were dirty, sweaty, and looking disgusting, now they look absolutely hot, pretty, etc. Which is exactly what is happening to Will right now. See how right there he looks sweaty as fuck, and then Just here, he has dirt all over his neck. It's kind of already Mike's POV here, let's not lie. But here, he suddenly looks so much better. His clothes don't seem as dirty, and his neck doesn't seem as dirty too. And even if there's blood running down his face, it's not something that looks absolutely disgusting. It looks powerful. As you can see, behind Will, everything is blurred and his gaze is intense. His hair, even though they're wet from the washroom and sweaty, it's looking good. Like, even if his hand looks dirty, everything in the symbol, he looks hot. And that's why a lot of people uses those moments after entering Mike's POV to like praise Will so much. It's because it was made to look like this. Not only this, but this moment is a shift for a lot of straight people or people who are anti-Byler. This is where they see Mike's face and they finally recognize that right there, this is not the face of someone that is platonic. Like, what he feels is not platonic. Also, to talk about shift of Mike's POV, what I find interesting is that we are not seeing Will passing out directly after all those events. Is still up and good, as you can see in those images. So Will doesn't pass out now. So as you can see, is not passed out yet either, and he's still in those clothes. So he's not passing out now. He's passing out afterwards, after something, because we know that they are in the basement at some point. I don't see why they would be in the set of the basement if they don't film in the basement. And here you can even see some markings on the ground. So yeah, there's going to be a scene of them in the basement at some point, and you can see the shoes are the same as the red outfit, well, the red pants outfit, which he's also wearing now in this scene where he's passed out. So he's going to pass out, in my opinion, in episode 6 or at the end of episode 5, but he's passing out in between those two episodes. I don't think it's going to be at the end of episode 7, because I think in episode 7 he's going to have his new outfit, which is the sweater, like the kind of orange sweater with the vest. In my personal opinion, I think he's going to pass out afterwards, after this scene where he screams "run." There's an audio that went out a few months ago where we can like hear "Mike, please run" or something like this, but the audio is so hard to hear. Take my words with grains of salt, like really a lot of salt, because I don't know for sure if this is what he says. But there's this scene, and then this scene of Will that looks extremely familiar to what happened to Max in season 4. So there's a lot of chance that, in my opinion, this is going to be Will being in coma for Escape the Coma Zones. There's a high chance that he's taken where Max is, or at least in some kind of coma, Vecna entering his brain of some sort, because I do believe that at some point Elle is going to try to reach Max, to reach Holly, but she won't be able to do it, so she'll go into the tank, because we know that at some point she goes into the tank. She has her wetsuit, which is also the same time where she is having a heart-to-heart with Mike before she goes in. So I think the situation is kind of like critical. Will could be passed out. Elle is about to go into the tank. Mike is literally not useful because, well, it's a mind battle right there, so he can literally do nothing. And I think there's a high chance that they're going to have a heart-to-heart after Mike feels so, well, worthless, useless. Or maybe he's trying to like be optimistic, and that's why she says, it's not one of your campaign, you cannot write the ending, because like he's worrying about her or about Will, about Holly, about his parents. Everyone is kind of like in very dark situations. So now we will have to see what happens to him and what he feels like. Because, well, if Will is passed out and the main character of season 5 is passed out, we have to shift to someone else, which I believe is Mike. Just like we did when Will was not there in season 1, Mike was the narrator.
So this is at the direction of my bed. I literally forgot
to count all of the sheer looks and blah blah blah. For the touches, I counted that there was 8 times they touched. Different, like not brush of knees, not bump of the elbow, just touches. And I was really strict. With the way I counted that. For the sheer look, I counted 25. And again, I was very strict. And at some point, I stopped counting. In the field scene, I didn't count every time they looked at each other. But there was also 6 of them I was like, I don't know if that could be considered a shared look, but that was like them looking at each other kind of weirdly. So there are 6 of them too. So it would be 31 if you take into account those 6. They didn't sit next to each other, so there's no brush of knees, obviously. But bumping up for the elbows, there's 4. That's only for volume 1 since the episode 1. And if you start to count everything they've done since season 1. If they wanted Will to be rejected, they would have done that. Do you realize that? They would have explicitly made him be rejected. But they didn't. They gave him hope in volume 1. They gave him hope, and we know something that doesn't exist. Slow burn rejection. They created this beautiful love story that bloomed little by little in each season for a reason. And mind you, this original script of season 3, season 4 are gayer than the thing you see. And even season 2, like the whole thing was a setup. It has always been set up, especially Will's love for Mike. But they decided to make Will's love for Mike bloom at the same time that we start to realize that Mike is also being weird. Will would have been a bit more obvious earlier, but instead they decided to make them parallel each other. Now, one thing I also want to talk about is that they wrapped Will's acceptance arc in volume 1. If the goal was to make him rejected, they would have used the rejection as a way for Will to accept himself. But they didn't do this. The rejection didn't happen before that. The self-acceptance happened before that. Not only it happened before that, but they showed Will being hopeful. They showed Will thinking about something very precisely. They showed Will taking confidence in flirting back. Like, I don't think we realize the extent of what we just saw. There are not many scenes, but they're enough. Enough to make the general audience and the public opinion change completely about what is going on. And that insane. In a few scenes, they managed to do that. This arc is just so beautifully made. It was so beautiful. Like, we see Will gradually coming up to term with who he is, slowly through 4 episodes. But not only this, Robin too. Robin found someone that was like her. Just like Elle found her sister, someone that was like her. And those two things come at climax at the same time. Elle finding her sister, Will finding his independence because of Robin, they all come at the same time. It's a parallel in my opinion. Robin is so important for Will, but Will is so important for Robin too. Robin here had the chance to express herself clearly to someone that could understand her and what she was feeling. Not only this, but I said it earlier, she could take the place of the person that she never had in her life and that she had needed at some point, but no one took this place. She had to do it all alone. And here she's taking the role of helping Will do this, to not be alone like she was. And her staying with Will, mentoring him, is so important for her and her character arc. She's not alone, even if she has friends, even if Steve is aware. That's not the same thing, because it can never relate to what she's feeling. But here, she knows that Will can relate and that he can understand. This is not only a service for Will, this is also a service for Robin. The experience they share is not rejection, it's the rejection of themselves. They rejected themselves. That's his self-acceptance and accepting his love for Mike. That is not a mistake. It's not something to be afraid of, something to be scared of, that made him channel all those powers. The speech is so goddamn important. You cannot take that out just because you think Mike is stummy. No, you cannot. It's so beautiful on Will's part, and you see how he is taking more confidence, even response to his own mother, even if he apologized later on. He's fighting for himself. And he's more and more and more starting to fight for himself. That's why I believe he won't die. He won't let himself die. A lot of people say that he's self-sacrificial. Yes, but here in Volume 1, they literally showed he won't let this happen. And after accepting himself like that, I don't think he would let himself die either. I don't think so. I don't think so. It's a one-in-one situation. Henry Vecna cannot live if Will is alive. I think it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful way of portraying coming of age. And at the state we are right now in the story, I do not believe that they are going to make Will rejected by Mike. Because if they wanted to do this, they could have done that a million times. But they didn't. No, it's not rejection that is going to make him have those powers. It's acceptance and realization that he is indeed loved, because that's where he finds his power. That's where he finds the power to fight. It's by love. And when you have this information that is explicitly portrayed in episode 4, you quickly understand that to continue to fight on, to have even more power, he will need even more love. Yeah, I think it's important. I think we have to keep that in mind. I think I finished this video. I don't think it's necessary for me to talk more. I hope you liked it. If you have any other evidence that I didn't point out in this video, you can tell me in the comments. I am going to make a video about Volume 1 relating to all of the previous seasons, show how recontextualized the Will Mike situation is, because that's what happened. They recontextualized their actions and the way they behave together since the beginning. And so I'm going to make a video about that, so you can like, subscribe, and comment if you want to. I'm going to say have a great day, night, whatever. Goodbye.